Luz, are you sitting in on the class?
No, I'm doing my, actually, I'm doing 40 calls because tomorrow I don't want to call.
So today, we're going to find out. Okay. We're going to figure out how we're going to get these sellers who are scared to sell to go ahead and list their house. So first thing we need to know is why don't they want to sell? What are they afraid of? What are they afraid of? Somebody give me one thing.
They have nowhere to go.
That's the biggie, isn't it? Can I spell it?
Leslie Brown's class.
Nowhere to go.
Where do they
They
go?
have nowhere to go. What else? Anybody in Zoom land? What other excuses are you getting?
It's not the right time, too much going on in their personal life.
Okay.
They're gonna sell high, but they don't want to buy high.
I had an answer for that. Okay. Anybody else? Any other ideas why they don't want to sell right now? Can we all kind of agree that the most often one we're getting here is the nowhere to go? Mm-hmm. So how are we going to overcome the fact that they have nowhere to go? That light is absolutely blinding.
Well, I think it's sliding back here too. That's why I got the sunglasses.
All right.
Anyway.
All right. So the first thing we need to do is the same thing that you're told in every listing class, and that is, what's their motivation? What is your motivation for selling? Why did you call me to come here in the first place? Why, Katie? Why did you call me to come here?
Well, I've been following the market and I know that the values are up and that I could make a good profit on this house.
So if you were able to make a good profit on this house, what would that do for you?
Well, I always want to invest my money well and get a return back. So if I could make $100,000 on this house, then why not?
Absolutely. And then you'd want to have some of that money that you made to buy investments, but you also have to have somewhere to live, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is a great time for this to go. So remember, Katie, last year when I met with you and we said your house was worth $700,000?
Yes.
Yeah. So now in this year, property values, according to the economists, have risen almost 15%. That means that your house is now worth $800,000. So you're making $100,000 more this year than you would have made last year when you sold. But you need something to buy, right?
Right.
So the two things that you're going to buy one investment, you're going to buy one house to live in. So let's say the investment that you buy was that condo that we looked at for $250,000 last year. That's gone up about 15% too. So it's about $285,000 now for that condo, meaning it costs $35,000 more. So you still have an extra $65,000 to play with here. Even after you sold your big house, bought one investment, you still have another $65,000 that you can put on another property. So because your house is larger, the percentage that your property went up in value gives you more money than the prices that went up on these smaller properties that you're going to buy. It's kind of an ideal situation for you to be in, isn't it?
Yes, but if the prices are inflated, then it's not a good time to buy.
So here's the opposite of that. So if the prices are inflated and they're going to drop soon, your house is going to, say they went back down another 15%. Next year, your house you're living in is only worth $700,000 again. But the one that was $250,000, it's only going to go down $35,000, and it's still going to be $250,000. So you're saving money by selling now. You get $65,000 more by selling now. So it totally makes sense if you're downsizing to go ahead and do it now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just one answer. If they're downsizing, this is the perfect market for them. And that's the script, and I'll give you guys a copy of that. I didn't, in my script though, I didn't have it going the reverse direction, so I'll add that to you before I send it to you. I'll add that to it. Let me put it in. So let's go for a different situation. So we've covered someone that's downsizing. What if someone wants to buy a new house? They want to buy brand new construction. What if that's their motivation? They've been living in this old house that they inherited from their dad 10 years ago, and it needs remodeling, and they want to buy a new house. How? The new house is going to take at least 12 months. At least 12 months right now, probably 15 or 16 months in order for them to be able to move into their new house. What are we going to be able to do for them? What are some ideas?
You could list now with a lease back. Find somewhere else for them to rent.
What if they had, maybe they have family in town that they could live with for a while? There's one answer. Can you live with family for a while? Because certainly if you sell right now, you're going to make the most money you can. And you're going to lock in the price of your new construction right now so that you know that price isn't going up before it's built. And probably by the time it is built, the house you're going to buy that you're building is going to be worth more than you paid to get it built. More than likely. So this is a good scenario for someone who wants to build a house also, as long as you can find them that interim place to live. And this scenario works for almost any other of our objections that we get, or of the reasons that people are moving. Like say someone's going to move to a different area, someone's going to move into a living facility, somebody passed away. Those people we don't need to worry about. Those would be ideal ones to ask to sell their houses right now, or to find those people who are motivated to sell because of those reasons. But someone who needs to move to another house, it would be a dream world if you could get a contract on your house, find the other house, close the same day, move the same day. It would just be amazing. That just doesn't happen very often. So let's find these people who can help them have an alternative place to go in the meantime. So we identified friends and family. Maybe somebody of your friends who only come down for the winter, and their house is going to sit empty for the whole summer. And they don't usually do a rental, but they know you very well. So they might be willing to let you live there and pay their utilities or pay them a small amount of rent while your house is being built, right? What about just someone you don't know who has to go out of town for one reason or another? They need to have someone who's house sitting for them for the summer. There might be someone who has to leave because they have to take care of a family member in another area. This is where it's really good to have a good network of people that you can call and say, hey, I have this customer who's going to sell their house, but they don't have any place to move to and they're building a house. Do you guys know of anybody who would be wanting to rent their house out and make a little bit of cash on the side for their house while they're waiting for the house to be built? This is why we tell you to put everybody that you know in your database and keep in touch with them. Because you can reach out to those people and ask them if they know somebody. It's a great touch. You're trying to help two people at one time. You're not trying to sell anybody anything. You're just trying to be a helper. And that is just giving extra value to the people that you know. What about a short-term rental? Do we have resources of rental companies that we know that have short-term rentals?
Yes.
We have house hunters downstairs. We have all kinds of rental companies in this town. And I would advise you to become friends with those rental agents, because a lot of times those rental agents also have people who need to sell. And if you've shown them that you give your clients the most value, they might be willing to refer them back to you. I know there's a couple of different companies also that only do rentals, they don't do sales. And that would be the ones that I would choose to do the most, you know, try to refer people down to them who need to rent, and then they'll refer back to you people who need to sell. That would be an ideal situation if you know somebody who does rentals that does not do sales. That's the best one. There's a lot of real estate offices in town that do both. And I'm not telling you not to get a relationship with those people, but more importantly, get a relationship with someone who only does rentals. There's a company in Rotunda that only does rentals, and they don't even call themselves a real estate company. They call themselves a property management company. And I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm not sure that it's really kosher because they do manage rentals, but they don't have a real estate license. But I have had those people refer me to people that need to sell before, and I've not done that to somebody's party. And I haven't really ever referred them to anyone because I'm not sure that that is particularly a legal thing that they're doing. But if they have a place that my customer can rent, I'm gonna be okay with my customer. My goal is to help my customer. Okay. What about a lease back agreement? What about if they sell their house and they can lease back? You think that happens very often?
Yes, but not as extensive as someone who's building would need.
Right.
6 months, 8 months.
Yeah, it would be a shorter term one. Someone who's building, you're gonna have, well, it's possible, maybe somebody else is not ready to sell their house yet. So maybe it's someone who is not retired, they're retiring in a year, they're retiring next year. And they want to buy something now because they know prices are rising and they want to lock in their retirement home now. But they're not going to come down here and use it for a year. We should be networking within our office to find those people and find out who out there is wanting to buy something now and wanting to rent it until they retire. Because there's plenty of that happening, isn't there? Are you guys getting any calls like that? Can't see your answers really. Hi, Marlene is here too. Are you getting calls from buyers who think they're going to retire in 2 to 3 years and they want to buy something now before prices get out of their pricing?
I haven't, no,
You haven't had any of those?
no.
We're getting some. So I know that is happening. And you could actually put social media ads out for that. Say, are you retiring in the near future? Buy now and rent it. Rent it until you get here. Why not do a social media ad to find that person? Or again, talk to your sphere of influence and ask them if they know anybody. Do they have any family who's going to be retiring to this area in the near future who might want to have a short-term investment before they get here, which would pay for part of the cost of owning that, or actually a lot of the cost of owning it the next few years until they actually retire. Could be a win-win. All right. Let's think about the buyer's perspective if we do a lease back. Because a lease back is probably going to be one of the most valid ways to solve this problem for your seller. So a lease back can be benefit to the buyer too. If the buyer's in the opposite scenario, buying before selling, a lease back could be of serious financial benefit. So say it's somebody who has a mortgage up north and they want to buy something down here and they don't qualify for 2 mortgages. You got to have rental income on this one down here. There you go, you solve both people's problems. So that's one way to look at that. Yeah.
Would you recommend if somebody wanted to stay in their home, but they also want to list now, doing a 6-month lease back?
So when are we going to tell people that they want to do that? So you're taking a listing of someone who wants to stay in their home. That's completely doable right now because people want to buy something. And a lot of people who are wanting to buy something, it's their second home and they're not going to come until October. This time right now that we're in, the end of the winter, season is the perfect time for this to happen for people, because they might not be coming back to October. In fact, the listing appointment that I was just at was that exact scenario. They want to buy something. They don't know exactly what it is. They've been going to open houses, haven't found the right thing. They have someone coming from Vermont who wants to buy their mobile home, but they have cash because that mobile home is really their dad's who passed away. And they have $400,000 cash waiting around to buy something. So this guy coming from Vermont to buy their mobile home is not my focus. I'm gonna let them do that. They've already got it worked out. But we're gonna help them buy something. Sorry. I don't want to list the mobile home. I really want to help somebody who wants to spend 400,000 cash. Not that I wouldn't take that listing, and I told them I will. If it doesn't work out with that guy, I will take it, and I'll probably get you more money than you're going to get selling it to him by himself. I'll pay for my own commission because you're going to get that much more money. But also, I can't guarantee you if I sell it for you that I'm going to be able to find someone who wants to let you live here for 3 or 6 months. I can't guarantee that. So their situation, it is best. So you want to make sure that the person who's the seller has a really good prospect of being able to buy if you're going to put someone into the situation. So for this instance, what I'm talking about, my new buyers now who are selling their mobile home, they have 400,000 cash. Pretty likely they're going to be able to win a bid, right? They've got cash, they can move whenever. If the seller of the house they're buying needs a little bit of time to stay in there to find their next home, they'll be able to give it to them. They're going to have a lot of leverage when they have their house sold. They'll have plenty of leverage. On the other side of the situation, you don't want to jeopardize the new buyer who is now going to be a landlord with someone who isn't going to be able to buy something and isn't going to move out in the end. So it's a little bit risky on the buyer side worrying about that. So you might be able to find an investor who has something like that, or a first-time home buyer who can extend their own rental where they're renting, you know, to deal with the lease back thing. We need to be aware of local eviction laws for our buyers who are going to allow someone to stay in their house. That's something to think about. So it could be, but that's something to think about. And we also need to think about if we're doing a lease back, who's writing that? I wanted to show you guys the post occupancy agreement. So I have to get into one of my contracts. Blake, help me. How do I get to my opportunities? There we go.
Yep, click on those 2 hands.
Opportunities. And then I want to go to any one of my opportunities. That is, let's just go to under contract one.
Yeah, that'll be probably fine.
Just thinking.
Yep, that computer likes to think.
Let's go to this one. It's a vacant lot, but all we need to do is get into command here so we can.
You're going to go to documents.
Documents. Thank you. I'm waiting for the transaction box to open up on the right-hand side.
It's coming.
Good.
It's coming.
And it's hidden behind all of you guys. So let me minimize this.
All right, there you go.
Go to transaction. There it is. And I'm not logged into there. And I'm used to a touch screen, so I'm trying to touch it. And my password, I think, is this. Oh, that's wrong. Hold on. I know my passwords because I saved them somewhere.
I felt funny.
Yeah. Tell it.
Okay, so I give away quite a few calendars on Christmas in November, December. And I sold this house to a couple that came up in Vermont. They bought it. A couple years later, they decided they wanted something nicer, so I listed it for them. Then bought a real nice house in the tunnel,
Yeah.
twice it out. And I come around with my calendar. And I mean, they'd been in there for a year and a half, you know, I gave them one of my calendars. I'm not gonna buy another house from you. And they're still there. And I think I did it again the second time, just for fun, to kind of try to mellow it out a little bit.
Oh my gosh, that's
You're
too
not
funny.
understanding why I'm here. Just give me
Right.
a calendar. That's all I'm doing. But
It is.
I check it every time.
That's funny.
My doorknob this morning,
Good
the
girl.
lady opened the door and I said, "Good morning." And she said, "Go away," and slammed the door.
Oh
She
no.
looked at my name tag and her face just got like really disturbing.
Have you ever seen Lemony Snicket's? Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events, and the aunt or uncle or somebody was deathly afraid of realtors, and the realtor came to the door and she starts running around the house screaming, "It's a realtor!" I think of that when I'm door knocking. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble. I thought,
Makes you wonder how many people you could actually
I
help,
know.
and they just are so afraid or had a bad experience, or their
okay, I'm in.
friend said, "Don't ever do that."
Okay, let's just go to this one right here. This is our newest listing coming up, guys. But I want to show you the document that you would use if you were doing a lease back. So we're gonna go to add documents and go to DocuSign forms. And we're going to go to the library, yes. And Florida Realtors. And then I'm just gonna put in occupancy, because I know that's what the name of the rider is. This is gonna be a post-closing occupancy by the seller. Let's add it so we can look at it. Where'd it go? Come on. Does anybody see it? Am I,
It's above. I just saw it. It's up.
here
There
it is,
Right there.
right there. Okay. Okay, so this contract is contingent upon the buyer and seller within a certain number of days prior to closing, delivering to each other a mutually acceptable written lease prepared at whose expense? The seller, the buyer, or they can split it equally. For the seller to remain in possession of the property until how many days after closing? The written lease shall provide that the seller shall pay a monthly rent of whatever. So what are we gonna put? What are we gonna suggest? They put in there for a dollar amount.
If you're representing the seller, then you don't want it too high.
Right. In this market, it's not unreasonable to expect that the seller could stay there for free. That could be one of the terms that you would put. I don't even want to tell you where you're gonna put it. Where are we gonna put it? From the get-go, when you take the listing, if you know the seller needs the lease back,
Realtor comments.
realtor comments, thank you, Heather. In the realtor comments, put in there, seller needs the lease back of at least this amount of time to be included in the terms of the contract. And that to me says that the seller's not expected to pay anything to stay there. Typically, in this lease that you have written, here's another question, who writes the lease?
An attorney?
You can.
You can't write a lease by scratching it out yourself, but you can use the Florida lease that's in these documents. Okay? Otherwise, you have an attorney write that. There's certain things that have to be in there.
Which you recommend?
I would have the attorney do it. I would probably recommend, let's close at an attorney's office in this situation. Let's plan on closing at an attorney's office. And then we can get the attorney to write that lease. Now, that being said, if you're gonna suggest that we close at an attorney's office, who's gonna have to pay for title? Seller's gonna have to pay for title. So in that situation, seller might be the one who's responsible for paying for having this written up as well. If you're closing with an attorney's office, I would expect them not to charge more than $500 maximum to write the lease for you. I would think they have a standard one, it might be 200 or 200 bucks for them to write the lease, which is well worth it for them to write something that covers everything that's needed for a short-term lease. You need to know who's gonna pay the utilities, who's gonna keep insurance, what's gonna happen if they don't move out. There's a lot of things to cover. Our standard Florida contract covers all of those things, and there's check boxes to fill in. But when it's a short-term lease, that standard Florida contract might not work. There might be things that are left out of it. I would feel more comfortable myself if the attorney wrote the lease. Yeah, but air conditioning's doing really cool.
I have a
That's
couple,
all.
Does that like every day.
I know, it does it all the time. But that's, so what happens if we don't get a contract, a lease that's agreeable to the buyer and seller? 10 days prior to closing, if it left blank. Seller can have to get out. I would make this a lot of days before closing. I would make this, so it's a 30-day closing. I would say 25 days before closing. We're gonna have a lease that everyone agrees on in 5 days. I would not be waiting until 10 days before closing to decide if you guys agree upon the lease or not. That's way too close to closing. What if they can't agree on it and then the seller has to get out? Well, also it can make the whole deal fall apart because it says this contract is contingent upon buyer and seller agreeing. And that puts your contingencies, so your buyer decides they don't really want to buy this, they just don't agree to any of the terms of the lease, and then you have to cancel. We don't want that.
You went into this very long? Very often, did you do these?
I've done, I'm gonna say in my 17 years, I might have done 10. 10 of them.
We want to do one of those every day.
No, you don't want to do it, but it's gonna be more necessary right now. With our sellers who need to buy a new construction, our sellers who want to buy a different house, our sellers who, you know, whatever their needs are, that we can't expect them to get out. And this is a really, really great option.
Hey,
So
Leslie,
Yes.
Jan Broom says a lot of property management companies use locally www.evict.com. You fill out the lease and the company types it up. Use it. Used to cost around $35. They write leases for all of Florida.
www.evict.com. Ooh, $35. Are they an attorney?
I'm not. It's a property management company. Wait, no. Oh, Jan Broom says yes. It's an attorney.
Great to know. That's awesome, Jan. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a great resource. I was looking teaching this class because I've never known about that before.
I heard somewhere that FHA loans couldn't have this. Do you know anything about that?
That's another thing. For the buyer, you need to check with their lender to see if that's going to be allowed, because this is part of the contract. This is an addendum that you mark the box on the contract. The lender's going to know that this is happening. So you need to make sure with the buyer who's buying it that this is going to work. Another reason to put it up front in the MLS, in the agent remarks, so the agent bringing the buyer knows the situation of the seller. We're going to make this work. We probably can't have a VA or an FHA. May or may not be able to do a conventional loan, because some conventional loans are going to require that the owner occupy it within a certain amount of time. It would work great if someone's buying it for an investment or buying it as a second home where they don't have to occupy it all the time. Now, there's something that we need to talk about there a minute, and I'm hoping that in one of our team meetings, when one of our lenders talks, Heather brought this information to us that Fannie Mae has limited their purchasing of investment homes and second home mortgages to 7% of their entire portfolio. I looked into it a little bit further and I found out that they have had a track record of having about 10%. So right now they have like a 3% too many. So they've really restricted the second home and investment home mortgages that they're willing to buy. There's still some banks who are willing to do that, but it may or may not affect some of your buyers. You need to be aware of it and talk to your lender about it.
Yeah, and it's hurting the rates. Their rates for the second home mortgages are much higher now.
Yes, absolutely. Second home mortgage rates are much higher, like 1.5 to 2 points is what I heard. Like people are getting 4.5% now, where they thought they were gonna get under 3. So that's really good information to know.
Question.
Yes, please.
If you're taking the listing and the seller's building, they need a longer lease back,
Yes.
would you recommend putting an amount in the realtor remarks that they would pay?
Yeah, if it's gonna be a long one like that, that'd be a great idea. Seller willing to pay this much to lease back for up to 16 months, 18 months, whatever. And, or, yeah. You wanna make it clear though, that they have to do a lease back and they are willing to pay this. Plus, they're gonna pay the utilities. If there's a pool, they're gonna maintain the pool. It could be a really great deal for someone who wants an investment. Or someone who isn't gonna be here for a while. It can work out great, absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of selling before you buy. So one reason to sell before you buy is so you won't have the risk of paying for 2 mortgages at a time, right? Some people aren't even gonna qualify for 2 mortgages at a time. So that they might have to sell before they can buy their next house. And maybe they're having a baby or they're getting married and their family's growing and they really need a bigger house and they need to sell before buying. So that would be a good benefit for them to be able to lease back for a short. Also, if you sell before you buy, what else are you going to have in your hand to help you make your offer and your purchase? And you're going to have some cash. Most people selling these days do have equity in their homes. So they're gonna have some cash that they're gonna be able to put down. It's gonna help them be able to make a stronger offer. They also will then also know what kind of equity they'll be able to put in their new home. I'm gonna talk about that one. Oh, you won't have to be pressured to reduce your asking price to sell your home quickly. Don't be pressured. Yeah, and then you won't have to have the responsibility of home ownership on 2 properties, like the maintenance costs. You won't have to pay the electric on both houses. You won't have to pay the water on both houses. You won't have to pay the mow both on for the time frame between when you buy the next house and then you sell. The cons, of course, are what we've been talking about. Finding a temporary place to live can be chaotic, for sure. You'll have to probably deal with moving 2 separate times. If you sell before you buy, you might have to move into a short-term rental. But you know, yeah, we have John Savage, who's available. He's one of our vendors and he does a great job. I've used him with a lot of my sellers. He comes in and puts everything into pods. They put the pods in their air-conditioned storage. You go live in a short-term rental for a little while. When your house closes, he brings the pod over and they unload it. It's worked out beautifully and it's really not even that expensive. I was surprised at how economical that could be for people.
What's the name of the company?
John Savage's, yeah.
Valentini and
Oh shoot, I'm sorry, John. I don't remember.
it's Valentini something.
Davian Valenti.
Yeah,
Davian Valenti.
Valenti.
And his cards are in the kitchen. You would, if you do sell before you buy, you may feel pressured to buy the new home in a hurry. You may have to pay for storage. and your investment will temporarily be out of the real estate market. So you won't, once you sell, you won't be continuing to get that rise in equity, because now you have the cash, and the cash is sitting in the bank making 0.5%, not 1% a month, but 0.5% a year. But in the meantime, you have that cash, you can make a good offer, you can get your offer accepted and get to your next house. What if you did it the other way around? What if you bought before you sold? If you have the ability. If you're gonna buy before you sell, you either have to have cash in hand, or you have to qualify for both mortgages, or you have to have, I've seen this work out, where you have a lease on the house that you're selling. Someone's gonna lease it from you. So you can sell that, move into your new house, say your lease is only 6 months. In Florida, if a lease is less than 6 months, you have to collect tourist tax on it. Just remember that part from the lease thing. I would suggest not getting anyone into a lease that's less than 6 months, because we don't want to be responsible for anybody having to submit those tourist tax. Where was I?
Who pays the tourist tax? The
Typically,
leasing?
the person leasing has to pay it, but the person who is leasing their house out, the lessor,
Yeah,
the lessor has to submit it to the state. And they actually have to get an account and stuff like that. So doing a lease that is less than 6 months is probably a difficult thing. If it's a post occupancy for 2 weeks or something like that, I wouldn't worry about it at all. Because that's just a post occupancy. It's not the intent of someone coming down here being a tourist. That's the reason that tourist tax is charged, something less than 6 months. For people that come down for a short time. So if you sold, benefit of buying before you sell. So you have a cushion in case something goes wrong during the process of purchasing a new home. That way, if the deal falls through, you still have your old home to stay in. So that would be a reason that they would be buying before they sell. If someone can buy before they sell, that would be the answer, obviously. Because also then, say they want to stay in their house for 3 months because they're going to remodel or whatever. So buy this house now, find the house before they put it on the market. Then you have a definite listing because they're going to sell once they get to move in. Maybe they have to remodel the bathrooms or something like that before they can move in. So they want to stay in their old house before they move into the new one. Or maybe their construction isn't quite finished. That would be another reason to just wait until you move out to sell. Also, with the way the market's going right now and how it ends up typically being like a madhouse of showings for a few days and then multiple offers, it's a lot easier to sell a house that's vacant. Right. So if somebody's already moved out, you can hold an all-day open house for 3 days, and just think how many buyers you'd have after that. And also, you have the opportunity to let that auction effect happen. And you're going to probably, if you do it this way, you want to put it in the MLS also. Right as soon as you list it, seller intends to wait till the 3rd day on the market before accepting an offer. That doesn't mean that you won't. If you get an offer the first day, that's $50,000 more than your asking price, and it's cash with no contingencies, you're probably going to go ahead and take it. But then your seller has the option of being able to wait until the 3rd day on the market or the 5th day on the market, or however long you want to say. I've seen some that say 10. The bank owns say 10 days. I've lived through 5 days on the market before, and I don't recommend 5. I'd say 3 days is a safe number that you can tolerate and not want to blow your brains out. And don't do it on a weekend. Do it during the week. But that is.
There was one like that in Bay Vista about a month or 2 ago, around the very end of one of those really nice streets.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they only put it up for like 3 days, and they got like 17 offers.
We did it last week. And this, I learned from the week before, where we put 2 of them on a Thursday and said we're going to wait till Monday to accept offers. It was the same. Luz had an open house. I think she had 21 people through the open house. I think we got 7 offers on that one that was over the weekend. It might have been more offers than that, but then last week, we put one on a Monday. And we said we will take offers until, no, we didn't, we put it on Wednesday, and we'll take offers till Friday at noon. We had 18 offers, 42 showing. And that was occupied. Right. You pretty much had, but we did do this for her. We said, there's pets in the home, seller can only have the dog out from this time to this time. So we had 15-minute showings from like 3 to 7, 3 to 7, and 11 to 2. That was how we handled that. But there's a ways around it. But this is what's going on in our market these days.
And most sellers will tolerate it because they want to get the top off.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, that's pretty much about all I have here. I've gone through pretty much everything I had. And I went online and I looked at a lot of different websites and people's articles and blogs and things like that to gather this stuff together. I'm happy to share it with you guys, but I did not quote who I got it from. So just know I didn't think of all this stuff myself, stuff that I found, and I just tried to put it all together in a manner that made a little bit of sense.
Hey, Leslie, I have a couple questions on the chat.
Please tell me.
Marlene asks, what is the rate of tax?
It's, oh gosh, it's like 13%. It's big. It's 12 or 13% for tourist tax. If you're gonna do that, if you need one that's gonna be a short-term rental like that, it's probably best to go through a rental agency. And that's probably where you're gonna see that too, is when you're gonna have someone who's staying a short time. They need to move into somebody's seasonal rental that was rented January, February, March, but now they're willing to rent it to you April through September or whatever dates that is less than 6 months, and you would owe the taxes. Whoever's living there is the person who owes the taxes, but whoever manages the properties who has to submit it to the state.
And then Jan Broom asks, what about tourist tax if less than 6 months and a day?
Well, you're supposed to charge it. If it's 6 months and a day,
You're good.
then you're fine. If it's less than 6 months is when you owe the tax. And like I said, I'd probably talk to a rental property manager if you have that situation. They're going to want a percentage of that rent in order to do that, but they might just take a placement fee. It might not be the total, like I know Karen downstairs, actually don't quote me on this because I haven't asked her lately what her rates are, but it's typically 50% of the first month's rent to place someone, and then between 10 and 12% per month after that. With short-term rentals, it might be a different answer. So it's good to talk to your rental people that you know and find out what their rates are, so you can tell your people when you're talking to them about this. Good to know. But if there's no charge, if your owner's going to lease back, so here's how you balance that out. Say the buyer wants to pay $400,000 for the house, but he wants $1,000 a month rent, and you're going to stay there for 6 months. Let him buy the house for $394,000. He gets the $6,000 that he wants for rent, but you have a lease that is 0, so there's no tax owed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's savvy.
You have to think outside the box. I think that would be an okay way to do it. If your lease doesn't say any money is changing hands, and that's all handled in the negotiations, that would be the way to handle that. Someone tell me if you think that's other than savvy.
Marlene says, so the landlord collects?
The landlord would collect the rent and would have to submit it to the county, yes. I think if someone wanted to be paid for the rent, just to take it out of the purchase price, just lower the purchase price. And that doesn't necessarily have to go in the contract. It doesn't, you don't have to say, I'm going to pay you $6,000 less because you're going to let me rent for free. A lender might not want to see that. if there's a lender involved. But if you're doing this, what happens? If you're doing a lease back,
I think the session expired.
oh, okay. You're gonna check the box that says seller's gonna lease back. It's gonna be contingent upon that. I want to tell you guys that I had a situation where my seller wanted to lease back. And we made that public in the MLS. The offer came in, the agent said, yes, the buyer is willing to lease it back to them for 2 weeks so they can find their next place, 2 weeks or it was a month or something. But she said, now my buyer's in title, and I know my title company doesn't like to deal with that, so don't put it on the contract. I'm telling you, my buyer agrees to it, but don't put it on the contract. 2 weeks in, I said, we need to get this lease agreement together. And she's like, oh, he doesn't want to do that now. Fortunately, my sellers were really nice people, and they said, it's okay, we'll just stay in a hotel for a while and find the next place. We worked really hard to try to find them a rental, and by the time we closed, they did find a rental, but they couldn't move in for 2 weeks. So they lived in a hotel for 2 weeks. So if some agent tells you, yeah, we'll do it, but don't put it on the contract because we don't want it to mess anything up, I think she might have been more worried about the loan. The buyers were getting home. If your seller needs to stay in the house, make sure it's on the contract. You'll learn a lot by your mistake. I always find that I learn more when I fail than when I succeed, of course.
Fail forward.
Fail forward, absolutely. Yeah, I learn twice as much when I fail as I do when I win. But it's always nice to win too.
Leslie,
So, any more questions?
I didn't hear the last part of what you said about not doing something. You kind of faded out. I don't even know what.
Oh, I was saying that if an agent tells you that their buyer will do a lease back, but we don't want to put it on the contract, don't do it. Make sure it's in the contract. Make sure it's in writing separately. Even if it's on a separate addendum, it's something that everybody has signed. And not that, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it after we get all the documents together.
Okay, but if you do it on a separate addendum, you don't have to send it to like the title or the lender?
Yeah, and I wouldn't do that if there's other parties that are involved. If this was a cash deal and that didn't matter for it to be on the contract, then there's no reason for it not to be on the contract. You more than likely you're going to put it on the contract. And so, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. No, it's the other way around. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So, I would just say, if there's going to be a lease back, 99% of the time you want it to show on the contract. If it's cash and they're going to handle it themselves, the buyer and seller are going to make an agreement that you're not involved with, that's their deal. They can deal with it. But if you're involved and you wrote anything on a document that says there's going to be a lease back, then make sure all parties who are involved know about that, especially if there's a lender.
If the buyer wrote up the initial offer as a cash offer, and then after it was executed, they decided to take out a partial mortgage, full mortgage prior to closing, then the lender wants that removed from the contract for loan purposes.
You're in a tough place if that happens. The question was if the buyer said they were paying cash, but in the end they really decided to get a loan and the lender wouldn't agree to the lease back, what are you going to do? I need a broker to answer that because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. But I think that the buyer would be obligated to honor the lease and they might not be able to buy with a loan. They'd have to pay cash. Hopefully you got proof of funds and hopefully it doesn't fall apart. But this is also why I said when I had that addendum up there that you get that lease agreement in place early.
Right.
So
Get it in place very early. Yes.
if so somebody puts down cash and then midstream changes it to a partial loan, don't they have to let the seller decide whether that's okay because the original terms weren't that?
No, anybody can say they're paying cash and still get a loan. They just don't have any contingencies for the loan.
Okay, so they have to go forward no matter what.
Yeah, they have to, if they get turned down for their loan or it doesn't appraise and they said they were paying cash, they have to close on it
Right,
one way or another, or the seller can sue them for specific performance.
right, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
They can say cash and get a loan all day long. It's perfectly fine. They just don't have any contingencies for it.
Okay.
Right? Did that help you with trying to get some of these sellers an option?
Definitely.
I think the lease back is the biggest, best option, but always explore those things like finding a friend or family to live in, finding a seasonal rental that's not occupied for the summer. Doing a lease back is the big thing. So always, always, always go back to their motivation for selling. Why are you going to sell? What's that going to do for you? What's important about that? You need to keep those questions need to be in your head all the time. And Jean Presley Whitaker taught me about going 3 deep on every question you ask your clients. Every time you ask a client, you should be thinking about why, what's important about that, and what's that going to do for you or your family. Thank you all for joining. And I'm sorry I was late. Next time I'll be more punctual.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for showing up.
How did your appointment go?
Good, that's the one where they already have a buyer, but they have 400,000 cash.
Cool.
Buyer, that's